Hello everyone, this is Krusty783, and with this year's run of Ninjago content over, and with the Ninjago saga as a whole now over, now is a better time than any to make a tier list ranking all of the installments of the Ninjago storyline. Please note this list is comprised of my opinions, and it's completely okay to disagree. If you see a pick for a season on here that you don't like, don't worry about it, because again, it's just my opinion. So, with that being said, be sure to let me know what your personal ranking of the Ninjago seasons is in the comments down below, and without further ado, let's get into it. So first of all, we have the pilots, which I think are a solid B tier. They're a pretty solid pilot, they do a good job at introducing us to the world of Ninjago, and they have a lot of charm going for them. These are very nostalgic, but they don't really have a lot going for them, especially compared to big, substantial seasons. They're a good introduction, and they're good fun, but I don't really think they're too special in comparison to other seasons and from a writing perspective. Although, it does obviously get points for being the first piece of Ninjago media. The next season we have here is Season 1 Rise of the Snakes, and this season is a very solid A tier, like very upper A tier. I think the season does an excellent job at expanding on what the pilots did, and one thing this season gets right that pretty much no other season is able to is giving focus to all of the Ninjago characters. Usually a season will have one focus and maybe like broad focus for other characters, but not really dial in on them too much. Season 1 manages to give every single one of the core 6 Ninjago characters, Kai, Jay, Zane, Cole, Nia and Lloyd, equal amounts of substantial focus and character development, which no other season has been able to rival since. Pythor is also an excellent villain, and yeah, it's just a really good season all around. It's a bit dated visually, but writing wise it still holds up excellently. Next up we have Ninjago Legacy of the Green Ninja, and I'm gonna throw this one in D tier. It has stuff going for it. I really like Lloyd and Garmadon's relationship. I like the stakes in the season. I think the final battle is fun, but there is a lot of the season that just comes across as kind of mediocre or poorly done. And I think there are areas that could have been done a lot better. I think it's also the season known for having some of the consistently goofiest moments in Ninjago history. And coming from someone who likes dumb stuff, that's not a compliment.
Grab a plate! Ninja, go! Get them!
It's an okay-ish season still, but in comparison to the other seasons, it does kind of fail. And speaking of failures, we have Ninjago Rebooted, which goes in about the same tier. It has a lot of the same problems, it has stuff going for it, but also monumentally fumbles in other areas, like say the love triangle plot I think is genuinely awful, but also Zane is a great character in this season, the aesthetic is really cool, and the Overlord is a fun villain, and seeing Pythor back was good. The season has a lot going for it, but like Season 2, it also monumentally screws up in a lot of areas. But what isn't a monumental screw-up is Ninjago Season 4, Tournament of Elements, which is going to go straight into A tier in my opinion. First of all, Chen is a fantastic villain, and he puts a lot of the Ninjago story into perspective really well, like say how we basically had a part in creating Lord Garmadon. I really enjoyed Chen in this season. I also think Garmadon is an excellent character as always, and the main ninja really shine here. I love Kai in the first episode of the season. I think Zane's plot, where he kind of has to like live with his new body and the existential implications that come with that, is genuinely so great, and I think is like the last really good Zane story, at least until Benefit of Grief came around. And yeah, this season has a ton going for it, and I really, really like it. Also, I don't know if anyone still remembers these Chen shorts, but these were a lot of fun. Next up here, we have Ninjago Season 5 Possession, and honestly, I don't really know where I stand on this one. I used to think it was the absolute best season of the entire show back until Sons of Garmadon came out, but I feel like with everyone's opinion kind of shifting on the season over the years, I've kind of shifted in some directions too. It's still a season I really like, but it is kind of, in hindsight, very flawed. Like say, I really love the Cole Ghost stuff, I really love Nia's story, other than that one scene with Ronin, which I'm not going to name because we all know what I'm talking about.
You know, I was thinking the same thing.
What did I do to deserve that?
You know what you were about to do.
This is the absolute worst scene in Ninjago series history, and it's not even a competition. I really loved Kai and Moru in this season. I think at the time Moru was the best villain Ninjago has seen. I think his story was excellent. I really love all of his like voice acting and just moments. I think he's a really well done villain. But there's also some weird stuff like Cloud Kingdom, which I think is kind of goofy, and there are just areas where it could have been a lot better. So I think B tier is a pretty solid place to put this season. And next up, we have what is probably the most divisive Ninjago season up there with Season 11, Skybound. This is a season you'll either love or hate. It's very rare that I see this season in the direct middle of a tier list because it's such a divisive love or hate it season, but for me, it's gonna go in the middle. We're gonna put it here. I think actually no, we're going to put it in C. Skybound is a very mixed bag for me. You'll either catch me loving it or hating it. I think it has some stuff going for it. I love Jay and Nia's plot, and I think Nadakhan, when he's good, is a good villain. But also, the season is really badly written in places. For example, it's very heavily insisted upon that you can't just wish people away, you've got to get them to do it themselves. That's where, like, the whole challenge for Nadakhan comes in, and why the ninja can't just wish Nadakhan away. And then Nadakhan just gets Clancy to wish Lloyd and Cole away, which is, like, really stupid.
Do it now!
I wish him away!
And completely invalidates his entire quest, because, like, why didn't you just do that to begin with? Not only that, but it's also doubled down upon when you could just use the sword to strike people into it. So it's like, why did Nadakhan do any of this? The guy's a complete idiot. Not only that, but there's this one scene where, like, he reveals his whole plan to Jay to betray the pirates and stuff, while Dogshank is in the room and nothing comes of this. There's just so many of these absolutely goofy writing moments in Skybound, and yeah, just... So to summarize it up, every character, including Nadakhan, is really stupid, and if it's an old character, they're dumbed down like hell. The plot barely holds up when you think about it, and it does have a really good Jay and Nia story though. The core story between Jay and Nia, I do have my problems with it. I do think Nia being a damsel in distress at the end is lame, but all in all, Jay and Nia's core story in this season is very good, and that elevates it for me a ton. Also, while being really not that smart, Nadakhan is a really entertaining villain to watch. His plan may be pretty poorly written, and he may be not as smart as the season makes him come across as, but like I say, he is a really entertaining villain to watch just do stuff on screen, which is why I don't really hate Nadakhan as a character. I just kind of wish his plan was written better. So I think lower middle tier is a pretty solid spot for this season in my opinion. Let me know what you think of that in the comments. That was a disorganized tangent. I hope it sounds fine when I'm editing it. Next up, we have Day of the Departed, which I know this is going to make many mad, but I'm going to put it in the same tier as Skybound. This might be nostalgia talking, but I really like Day of the Departed. I think Cole and Yang's core story is really solid. I love how Yang kind of realizes how much of like just a jerk he's been. Also, his whole motivation that he's just genuinely scared of being forgotten about forever is, I think, a pretty human and relatable motivation, and a pretty solid explanation for why he acts like the way he does, and it makes him very sympathetic, and I just like Yang as a character a lot, to be honest. I think he's a very slept-on villain. He's not like the best villain in Ninjago history, but I think his motivation makes him really human. I think, like, that's a pretty fun redemption story, and the main problem is definitely that it's 40 minutes long. The villains could have used a lot more fleshing out, amongst other things, although given Crystallized also had kind of having the same problem with the villains, it might not even be a length thing, to be honest. Also, the music and, like, most of the visuals in the special are genuinely beautiful, and seeing old villains back is really fun, and on top of all of this, Morrow's character work in Day of the Departed is fantastic. It is genuinely the best way they could have followed up on Morrow's story. Seeing him working on the good team is really fun. I really love Morrow in this special. And seeing how he's completely willing to sacrifice his second chance at life to make amends with the ninja and Wu is just genuinely beautiful stuff. So yeah, Day of the Departed was very much missed potential. It should have been a season, but for what it is, it gets so much good done in my opinion that I can kind of forgive a lot of the bad and put it in middle tier. Okay, here we go. It's Hands of Time time. And just as last time, this is the worst piece of Ninjago media ever. Pretty much everything about it is fundamentally flawed from a basic level. It's horribly animated, it's poorly written, it's got a really weird and weak plot, it has no substance, but there's one thing I will give this season, because I do like to point out positives rather than going all in on negatives. It is the season that made Wu a really good character in my opinion. Before Hands of Time, Wu was a pretty alright, I guess, character. He was pretty good in possession, but beyond that, he's kind of just hasn't really had much depth outside of being the generic master character. However, Hands of Time put him in a position where he was very much weak and ended him like in the time stream, which led to his season 8, 9, and 10 story of like becoming older again, which then directly led into his Wild Brain story, which kind of all created this giant journey of Wu going from being a generic master character to being like a cool uncle for the ninja, and I think that's such a cool character progression, and as much as Hands of Time gets wrong, it is responsible for starting Wu on the path to being a good character. Beyond that though, where do we start? As mentioned before, the animation is god-awful. Just a quick addition to this, there are some scenes that are really beautiful, but most of the time the season has baffling production choices or looks really flat. The villains are two-dimensional and boring. The plot to find Kai and Nia's parents is just like an absolute snorefest and has no substance to it whatsoever. There's literally no depth to this story outside of Kai want parent back, Kai get parent back, and that's it. It's not until Seabound, like 5 seasons later, until we see the actual emotional ramifications of Kai and Nia being separated from their parents the entire life. Did I mention how bad the animation is? Okay, I think I've made my point about how bad Hands of Time is. Let's move on to Season 8, Sons of Garmadon. And this is going straight into S tier because even coming up on 5 years later, Ninjago Season 8 is still the greatest piece of media to come out of this franchise. It is absolutely incredible through and through. It has the best character development for Lloyd or just any ninja any of them has ever gotten, minus maybe Cole's character arc over the series. Harumi is still hands down the series' best villain and is an absolutely wonderfully written character. The return of Garmadon is done perfectly. The return of Lord Garmadon after his amazing sacrifice at the end of Season 4 had so much potential to completely ruin all of that storytelling. However, these concerns were circumvented by having the entire point of the story being that the original Garmadon is gone. It's such an incredible way to bring back Lord Garmadon while still preserving his original story because you have the best of both worlds. Lloyd is still grieving his father because the true Garmadon is completely dead, whilst Garmadon still gets to be in the show and get new character arcs. It is the best of both worlds, and it is such a wonderful handling of this plotline. Okay, and next up we have the second best piece of Ninjago media of all time, Hunted. Hunted is more of what made Sons of Garmadon so incredible, and you gotta love it for that. It expands on everything that made Sons of Garmadon so good. My favourite scene of the entire season, hands down, has to be the scene from, I think it's Iron and Stone, where Lloyd and Mustake are basically just discussing what happened with Harumi and how Lloyd shouldn't be making the same mistake twice and how we can learn and move on. It's such a beautiful and heartfelt scene. Just the entirety of Hunted is just such like an awe-inspiringly good season. Like, I really love the themes of endurance and survival that go throughout the thing. It can be applied to a ton of real things. For example, it can be applied to actual conflicts, or the idea that you have to endure could just be applied to, say, a really bad time in your life, whether it be due to, like, depression or other such things. It's a very versatile message that I think a ton of people can relate to, and I think it's a very beautiful season for that. It also has great action, an incredible set of villains, a wide variety of, like, just beautiful visuals. This season just has so much going for it. What else is there to say? It's Hunted, you know? Last and definitely least, we have the last installment of the Oni trilogy, March of the Oni. Now, I love March of the Oni, but it is not as good as Sons of Garmadon and Hunted. My opinions on the Oni trilogy have largely fluctuated. At least all of these have been my favourite Oni trilogy season at least once at some point. However, right now I'm going to have to say that March of the Oni is a very high A tier. I love how this season concludes the Oni trilogy. I think it handles and wraps up Garmadon's character arc for now excellently. I love all the stuff about him learning like what humanity is and stuff, or trying to learn, his relationship with Lloyd, and just the Oni invasion and that whole aesthetic I think is really, really awesome. Also, Cole's fall while being a cheap fake-out death is an incredibly done scene. The biggest problem with this season, above all else, is that it needs to be much longer though. In my opinion, bare minimum it should have been 6 episodes, but in an ideal world, it would have been the regular Will film 10. I think the runtime really robbed this season of reaching its true potential, but what is there is still really beautiful and heartfelt. March of the Oni, despite its problems, is excellent. Okay, moving on, and we have Season 11, and you will already know what I'm going to say about this, and those who don't, prepare your angry comments. This is one of the best Ninjago seasons of all time. I love Season 11 so much. It pushed Ninjago forward so much in a technical sense. The lighting wasn't as good as the Oni trilogy, but the action was pushed like light years ahead. The fight scenes in the Oni trilogy I think are excellent, but in Season 11 they're a whole nother level of good. And not only that, the characters in this season are brilliant. I think Kai's powerless arc is pretty alright. It's a very poorly fleshed out story, but I think it hits the beats it needs to and comes out pretty satisfying at the end of the day. But where this season really shines is with the Garmadon family. Once again, Lloyd and Wu, their character work in this season is excellent. I love Wu grappling with his mistakes regarding Asphira. I love Lloyd grappling with his mistakes regarding Harumi. I love how Vex, Akita, and the Ice Emperor and all that tie into it. I think Season 11 is a really beautiful and heartfelt season. I love Crag. One of my favourite things about this season is the aesthetic of the Netherrealm. The aesthetic and the music just really tie together this melancholic set piece for Lloyd to kind of mull over his mistakes with, and I really love that about it. Someday, I promise, I'll put out a Season 11 review. I need to get around to making it, but know that I really love this season. And next up, we have the season everyone seems to love to hate nowadays, Prime Empire. I'm gonna throw this one into C. Prime Empire, like Skybound, is one of those seasons where my opinions kind of go back and forth on it pretty much every day. The opinions relatively stay the same, but my liking of it largely changes. And right now, I think it's just below mid in the lesser season tier. So it's still quite good, it just could have been a lot better. Same with Skybound and Day of the Departed, although I do think those two seasons of specials are better. Prime Empire's big problem is it doesn't really deliver any character development to the main ninja. I think in hindsight, other seasons make it like a lot more impactful to the show. For example, the Prisoner stuff is made a lot more impactful, knowing that it kind of influences the whole Wojira saga. So I think those problems have largely been fixed, even though like that's still an L on the season's part. But I think the core message surrounding AIs and the validity of their existence and how like they're just as important and sentient as humans, I think is a really powerful message, although I think it should have been tied to the main ninja a lot better. Like, say, I did this video a while back called Benefit of Grief versus Prime Empire, which summarized my thoughts on that pretty well, so if you want a more in-depth description, go watch that video. I'll put a link to it in the description. So yeah, Prime Empire is okay. It's not great, it's not good, it's okay. And next up on the tier list, we have Season 13, Master of the Mountain. And this is an instant A tier. Master of the Mountain gets so much right for a Ninjago story. The Skull Sorcerer is such a fun and well done villain. Cole's story arc is excellent and probably one of the best main ninja character arcs in the entire show. I love the deepening of his powers and his relationship with his mother and Master Wu, and it's done so well. And speaking of Master Wu, his character arc is done so well too. I love how this season really solidifies the idea that while the ninja don't need Master Wu as like a teacher anymore, they still do need him as a genuine friend who will support them at their every move. And I think that's such an awesome progression of the character, kind of completely solidifying his transformation from like a wise mentor character to a cool uncle. Vanya, I think, is pretty poorly fleshed out near the end. Her arc is great up until episode 14, where they just do a cliffhanger, then never follow up on it, and then they kind of just awkwardly end the arc. But up until that point, Vanya is a really well done character, and I love the Upply. What can I say? It's Master of the Mountain. This season is awesome. Next up on this list, we have Ninjago's second 44-minute long special, The Island. And this one is going to be going at the very top of B tier. I think The Island is a really strong piece of Ninjago media, and I really love how it foreshadows the Wojira story and makes the criminals from Prime Empire a relevant plot point. I also love the special's handling of Ronin. I think the way they have him kind of be like a very clear frenemy of the ninja was a really fun like reinvention of the character, and I think fits with what came before well, while putting him in a position where he can be villainous. I also really love Lloyd and Twitchy Tim's dynamic in this special. The idea of Lloyd kind of imparting what he's learned in the Oni trilogy in season 11 onto Twitchy is really impactful in my opinion, with him telling Twitchy that his trauma isn't just going to repeat over and over again and that he can work through it, I think was really powerful stuff.
Twitchy, I get it. You've been knocked down. A lot. But that doesn't mean you have to stay down. You're stronger than that.
Also, the Islanders had really fun designs and were just really fun characters in general, and again, the Wojira setup here was great and I love the new lore. The island, I think, while it could have been more, I think did what it could really well. With that island discussion concluded, this brings us to the last two Ninjago seasons on this list, and we'll start with Season 14, Seabound. This one is going to be going straight into A tier, right next to Master of the Mountain and Season 11. I think Seabound is an excellent season and a really smart way to make Ninjago feel fresh and new again. One of the big complaints with Ninjago in recent years is that it's gotten way too comfortable with just having a status quo which it kind of riffs off of over and over again. 6 ninja and a sensei living in their monastery, occasionally going out of it to fight various bad guys. The ending of the season, which sees Nia become permanently merged with the sea and leave the ninja team, really spices up the show's dynamic and made the plot a lot more interesting going into the next season. The next season would have to do a lot with these characters and really change up the dynamics now one of the core pillars of that is gone. Wow, I'm sure glad the following season definitely used these opportunities to their absolute fullest and wasn't wasted potential at all. Anyways, the actual build up to the sacrifice itself is really well done, and as the season goes on you can kind of get the sense more and more that it's going to happen, and there's a lot of dread associated with that, especially in the episodes The Calm Before the Storm and Assault on Ninjago City. Those episodes do really good jobs making you think, oh god, it's going to happen. On top of that, I really enjoyed the arc of Nia reconciling with Maya. I thought of anything from Hands of Time, their actual relationship between Kai and Nia and their parents is something that was very poorly fleshed out and something that needed more time, and Seabound does a really good job at making something good out of it. Kalmar is also a bit of a derivative villain from Pythor, but he definitely makes up for it because he has a really good on-screen presence, excellent animation, excellent voice acting, and he's just such a joy to watch. And Benfamar is a really solid character, not as good as some of the other Wild Brain side characters, but still really solid, and I love seeing him standing up to his brother. And with that Seabound gushing out of the way, congratulations everyone! You've made it to the part of the video where I complain about Crystallized. You thought the nightmare was over when this post came out, didn't you? But you were wrong! This is a season that for me only works when you completely turn your brain off, take it at absolutely face value, and dumb down everything else that came before. And I kind of did that to try and like it for a few weeks, but I eventually just realized I don't like it. Anyways, this is the second worst piece of Ninjago media of all time, right behind Hands of Time. It isn't as badly made as Hands of Time, but the story is way more detrimental to Ninjago's overall storyline than Hands of Time ever was. And it also has the extra special disadvantage of being the final Ninjago season, so this awful ending is going to be how the show's remembered forever. I know Ninjago 2023 is a thing, but this doesn't change the fact that Crystallized is the end of this storyline. This storyline is going to be forever defined by one of its worst seasons. So with that being said, in case it isn't clear as to where Crystallized is going on the tier list, it's going to be going straight into F along with Hands of Time. Now let's discuss why this season is bad. 1. All of the potential from Seabound is completely ruined. Jay and Kai have the potential for their first interesting character arcs in a long while, which is completely thrown out. Not only that, but Nia's sacrifice is reversed within about 7 episodes time, completely undermining the impact of Seabound. But at first it was fair enough, Nia doesn't have her powers, there's still some change to the status quo there, and some interesting hurdles for a character to go through. Then Nia gets her powers back within 20 episodes of that, and everything's back to how it was as if nothing ever happened. Not only that, but Nia's character arc post being restored is one of the worst character stories in this entire show and completely ruins every single bit of character work they've ever done for Nia since 2011. This entire story is basically just a worse version of Kai's powerless arc from season 11, which solely hinges on the fact that Nia is straight up useless without her elemental powers. Never in this season do they actually make an effort to show us that Nia can be useful in spite of her powers. Even the mech, which in the original season is her own creation, and that's part of what makes it so integral to her character, is just created for her by Pixel. Anything she does do just amounts to being a Samurai X themed taxi that ultimately just lifts the ninja from one place to the other. The only time Nia is contributing anything of worth at all to the team's efforts in this season is when she has her powers, reinforcing the idea that Nia is only useful with her powers. This completely goes against the entire idea of Nia's character being that you can be whatever you want regardless of if you have powers or not. Powers are not the obstacle to being a hero. In every season before this, Nia is amazing and contributes a ton to the team, not because she has elemental powers that shoot out of her hands, but because she is Nia and she brings her own mindset and skills to the team. Now she just gets to sit on the sidelines as the real ninja, do real hero stuff. Harumi and Lloyd were also wildly inconsistent characters and hands down some of their worst portrayals in show history. Harumi shouldn't have even been brought back at all outright because it completely flies in the face of everything that happens in the Oni trilogy and goes on to reinforce the message that you should constantly stick with your abusers, which is a horrible idea. Those are my main points of contention with the season, but there are a ton others, and if you want to see why that is, be sure to watch my review of the season. I would go over them all here, but it would honestly just be repeating stuff I've already said, and I feel like that doesn't really add much to the discussion and just brings everyone down. So for the sake of time and for not repeating my criticisms over and over and over again, just go check out this review. So, with that out of the way, this is my ranking of every Ninjago season up to 2022, Season 15 Crystallized. Be sure to let me know if you disagree or agree with me on this ranking in the comments down below. I'm sure a lot of you will disagree with me because there are some pretty controversial picks on here, so don't be afraid to make your opinions heard. I know I said this at the start of the video, but just to make sure it's 100% clear, just because I'm the one making the video here doesn't mean this is the only valid Ninjago opinion. Everyone is going to have their own specified and personalized rankings, and each are equally as valid as the other. So, as mentioned, be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video all the way through. It really means a lot to me, and if you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like rating on it and subscribe to the channel for more Ninjago videos just like it. Also, massive thank you to the channel members whose names are listed on screen now. If you want to get a channel membership yourself and see your name on this list, along with getting exclusive benefits like a scrapped Krusty video compilation, be sure to hit the join button next to my subscribe button. With all of that said, thank you so much for watching everyone, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye for now.